Christy, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. I can only imagine how busy you are right now, and that's exactly why I wanted to jump on a call with you. The purpose of these interviews is to just add to the conversation about how this crisis is impacting well, I mean, it's obviously impacting us all, but especially those who have no resources. Lack of resources really are a very big population around the country that are vulnerable in totally different ways. And that's why I would love to hear from you and about your work in Springfield, Missouri.
Absolutely. So I am the pastor of the Connecting Grounds Church in Springfield, and we are located in North Springfield, which has a high density population of our unsheltered here in our community. And so on any given week, I can see as many as 100 to 200 of those who are currently just struggling to survive on the streets of our city. And under typical weeks prior to crisis, that looked like, us doing things like hosting street choir practice. And we hosted 2 community meals a week. And we would have 2 community care days a month where we would have different booths, and they could get haircuts and fill out food stamp applications and connect with caseworkers and learn about addiction support groups. And, so those were the kinds of things that we were doing prior to a week ago. And then as this health crisis kind of, grew closer and closer to home, we had our first positive case here in our county, in our city. And we recognized very quickly that some things needed to shift. So the first order that was given by our community was that we had to decrease gatherings to 50 or less. And so, we were able to still hold church that morning. One of my biggest fears is because that is such a difficult to communicate with population. Really, to communicate information clearly requires us to gather them socially because, we just can't send out an email update. I can't update a Facebook group. I can't make phone calls. So we held church that Sunday, announcing that pretty much all of those things that I named were going to be discontinued. Church would not be meeting. We called it a family meeting, is what we called it for that service. We answered questions. We did the very best that we could to assure them that we were going to be there in different capacities. And so there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of concern. There's a lot of feeling like, who's going to be here to take care of us kind of thing. But we've shifted, and so we're still there, and we're still there with them. But now it is literally 3 to 6 every day that we are at our building. And the first couple of hours are just kind of prepping and getting things ready for sack lunch distribution. And we have 2 churches, our church and then another church here in town that we're partnering with, that we distribute sack lunches out on the sidewalk. We've been scheduling healthcare providers to come during that food distribution just to take temperatures and check on people who might be symptomatic. But truthfully, they're also doing a lot of other things. I mean, this is a population that does not have regular access to healthcare, and even going to the emergency room right now puts them in great risk, because if just one member of this population were to contract this virus, it could be deadly and detrimental to hundreds in our community. And so we have really advised them as much as possible, try to avoid emergency rooms and things like that. So last night we had a nurse practitioner that was serving during dinner who helped a woman who had a severely sprained ankle. And, we were able to wrap that and put some feelers out on Facebook and get her a knee cart because she's having to walk everywhere right now. I mean, there is currently no day shelter that is available for longer than 20 minutes in our city right now. They can go in, check their mail, do a couple of things, and that's it during the day. All of our public libraries here have closed. Most of our restaurants are closed down. We have people that are having a hard time just finding a safe place to go to the bathroom. And that's been a really hard reality. I had a young woman who was very, very angry the other night during dinner, and I could just tell she was upset. So I pulled her aside and asked if everything was okay. And she confided in me. She had gone to 3 different businesses trying to find a restroom, and none of them would let her in. And she ended up having an accident, and she was just embarrassed and she was angry. And so, quietly, we were able to get a volunteer to go inside and find her, some pants and some things like that to get cleaned up. And she was able to be taken care of. But that literally, it's, I talked to a police officer the other night, and I asked him, I said, when we finish dinner, where's the best place for me to send them? Like, should they go to the park and he literally looked at me and he said, there is no legal place for them to sleep, for them to even sit right now. Literally the only legal action in our community right now is for them to walk up and down the sidewalks. And they're doing that carrying everything that they own, and they are exhausted and they are tired and they're scared.
Christie, why is it up to you and this other church is partnering with to handle this? Why is our city not doing something to shelter our folks who have nowhere to shelter in place?
Right. So, here in our community, I know that there are community leaders that meet regularly that have been having the same ongoing conversation for several days about, can we find a building? Can we do something? As far as I know, there's not been a lot of progress on that conversation as of yet. So we're just trying to do what we can to kind of hold the tension and hold the gap until a solution can be found, and we're praying that a solution can be found. There are a lot of empty buildings in our community right now. There's a lot of empty college dorm rooms. There's some abandoned school buildings that are owned by the school district. There are some properties that are available, and so I'm hopeful that someone will come forward and offer the use of those, or that they could be leased for a short period of time. I don't know exactly what the right answer is, and I'm not engaged in all of those conversations. So we're just trying to focus on the day-to-day survival and meeting the needs that we can until those answers are found.
I don't see much call to action for providing tents.
Right.
So
I specifically asked that question the other night of police, because we actually have had a donation of tents made by a local business, which anonymous. I'm currently holding some tents right now, and I asked, is there a safe place that we could have them put these up? Because to me, if we need to be quarantining people, checking on people, bringing people food, it makes sense that we have a stable location for them to be, so that they're not traveling all over the city walking around either, both for a contraction and a sharing purpose, right? It's kind of that dual risk that the homeless population faces. And I was told that currently in Springfield, that the tent orders still are what they have always been, which is if someone complains about a tent, then it will be torn down. And so there's not a safe place for them to put up a tent. It's not legal in Springfield to do that.
Is it reasonable for us to ask property owners of some of these parking lots that they open up their lots as a legal place to place tents?
So the issue is that Springfield system is a complaint-driven system. So if someone were to drive by and didn't like the fact that there were tents in a business that was willing to do that, then theoretically those tents could still be asked to be removed. And so, for me, my church is in a strip mall, in a shopping center, and we lease that space. And so we share a parking lot with other businesses, and there are a lot of neighbors in our neighborhood that do not like what we do. They do not appreciate the outreach that we do. We've gotten a lot of threats over the last couple of months, and over the last week as well. We've had some pretty horrific things happen. I actually had a woman that came to me at outreach last night, and she was so shaken up, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And she said that she had been at the church during the day when it was not open. I was not there. And she apparently had laid down to take a nap on the sidewalk, which definitely can be problematic with neighbors and other businesses. But she said she woke up and there was a guy that was taking pictures of her in a car, and she got her stuff collected and went to the grocery store next door, and said that the gentleman followed her into the grocery store and was kind of harassing her, and saying, you don't need to be laying out there, making comments to her. So she went to the manager of the store and just said, he's making me uncomfortable. And he pretty much, just told her, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. He's a business owner here. And, so those kind of things are really frustrating to me. We deal with that on an ongoing basis, but especially during this time of crisis and pandemic, we just need a compassionate outcry from our community to recognize, this is a population without constant access to the news. They don't know everything that's happening. There is a huge rumor mill that is circulating, and I feel like we spend a lot of time every night just trying to speak truth and saying, as far as I know, there is not going to be a deployment of the National Guard. As far as I know, they're not setting up a FEMA camp in Springfield. As far as I know, they're not going to be rounding up our homeless individuals. But there is so much fear surrounding those rumors that it's really hard to decipher what's true and what's false. You know, I will say this, you know, we have a lot of amazing service agencies here in Springfield, and I have been in communication with many of them. We have consolidated with some of those organizations to like absorb some of their inventory for outreach, and we're storing that for them. We're actually in the process of getting keys made to our church so that caseworkers can go in and grab anything that they need based on the donations that we're getting. You know, I know we've got caseworkers literally just driving around trying to find people and what do they need and come to our building and get what they need. You know, I've heard from a lot of different people who've said, hey, I may be working from home, our office may be closed, but call me, text me anytime if there's something that I can do. So I do feel like there is a lot of collaboration between all the different agencies. I feel like we have a lot of amazing people that are trying to do things. I think what's kind of hard and what's frustrating is, like, for example, right now, with the example that I told you about the young woman who unfortunately ended up having an accident, not being able to find access to the bathroom. We have had some donations come in to provide porta potties. Well, I lease my building, so I can't put porta potties in my parking lot without my landlord's permission. And so we reached out to another church who has agreed to put porta potties in their parking lot with a hand washing sink. We're trying to move on that quickly because it's kind of an urgent need, but trying to get, you know, make sure we have the right permission to do that so that doesn't receive pushback. Those kind of things are a little bit challenging right now just to navigate. And I understand. I mean, I know that there are 100 different conversations happening for leadership all the time. But I think some of that flexibility under a state of emergency to say, like, we just need to do what we can to meet, you know, hygiene issues and life-threatening issues. We had a situation the other night where we were trying to provide cold weather shelter for guys because the large cold weather shelter was not going to open because that wasn't safe. And so, you know, we had asked if we could line up churches to be able to do that. We were able to get 12 churches on board who could each open for 8 men and 2 volunteers so that those volunteers could rotate and each one of them stay open all night, stay awake all night. And, you know, we had some challenges with that because even despite the fact that we are under a national, state, and local state of emergency, there were protocols that they felt like still needed to be followed. And so at the end of the day, you know, every one of our churches was cited by the fire marshal for a violation, which was really just a verbal warning, but it was also came with a letter that said, essentially, you can't do this again. You know, the challenge is looking at the forecast. The 31st of March, the temperatures are supposed to fall into the 20s again. And right now, those churches, I don't know that we're going to be able to help in the same capacity that we were able to help the other day, based upon those violations that we were given. And so, you know, I can't imagine a scenario where we have to choose between someone having to possibly freeze to death of hypothermia or possibly have to suffer by contracting COVID-19. And so that's kind of the tension that we're existing in right now. And so, you know, that ability to just respond and help without all of the loopholes, I think is something that's a little bit challenging right now.
Have you received any sort of input as to why they're not just having the shelters quarantined and shelter in place so that people are actually indoors?
Right. So, you know, I know that there are some shelters that are able to do that, you know, where there were already people in residential shelter. We have some emergency shelters. We have some, you know, rehab programs. We have some different things like that have been able to adapt and have been able to adjust to the CDC's recommendations and are still sheltering those individuals in place. Really, kind of the crisis that we are facing on the humanitarian and the healthcare crisis side is with those individuals who were not already in shelter somewhere, because you know, most of those locations have had to cap off. They can't accept anyone new, which is understandable because they are full and trying to do the best that they can. But that has left, you know, a good, you know, we're seeing an average right now of about 150 to 175 individuals nightly for dinner outreach over the 2 different locations that we're doing. So, you know, it's a big population that has just been left stranded out here without a lot of resources or a lot of direction as to what to do.
That's the trick, is there's no direction. And when they say you can't come to the cold weather shelter, it's below freezing and it's raining and you can't come to the cold weather, but then where do you propose they go?
Right.
This is my question. Where do you propose they go?
Right.
And nobody has an answer for that. And that's what I'm
You know,
most.
and we have asked questions, at one point in time, as we were trying to, early try to get this organized, did we need to serve, in our church locations? Did we need to try to serve somewhere else that may be more centralized and away from people? Because again, my church shares a parking lot with a grocery store. And so is there a safer place to do that meal outreach on a regular basis? So we had reached out to see if we could possibly do that, like in a couple of our city parks that are easily accessible. And, right now with social distancing, not necessarily being utilized as much. And we were essentially told that we were going to have to pay to rent the pavilion nightly to be able to do that. And, again, that was very early in the process. That's not a conversation that's been revisited at this point, but, can we not have those conversations about thinking outside the box and utilizing spaces like our parks or, fairgrounds or some of those kind of things that aren't being used right now during this, season of social distancing, just to be able to give those people access to the basic necessities. I mean, right now, they don't have regular access to laundry. Last night was the first night that we were able to kind of take a deep breath and go, okay, we've got to figure out a way to make sure we're meeting not just food, but other needs as well. And so we kind of set up a system last night on my sidewalk that was very, very, basic. It was just literally, if you came up, you can request one thing tonight, like what is your biggest need, and we'll do our best to try to meet it. And so I had people request everything from a clean pair of underwear to a new pair of shoes, to a towel. One guy just wanted a towel. We had a couple of families that they requested a bag full of canned goods, so those kind of things. And so we're going to be trying to do the best that we can to give them that option every night, as long as we've got donations to pull from, which, man, this community, that is one thing we're amazing at, is donating. And we have just been so blessed by clothes and things like that. But there's some big needs that we're going to have to fill. There's a lot of need for backpacks right now and rolling suitcases, because, they're trying to carry everything that they've got. And we've got a lot of backpacks that are breaking down, zippers that are popping, and anything that we can get on wheels to relieve the pressure on their shoulders and their necks right now is amazing. So.
It seems that if the wellness of our communities is really up to us as community members, not just the city officials, but we all have to contribute to the wellness of our community, which includes all of our community members, then it makes sense that we're all contributing something, whether we can be out as volunteers or financially
Absolutely.
donating. You just named a few things that we can
Mhm.
donate to you all. Is there anything else that, if you could really get out one message to our community in the ways that in which we can support you, what would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the things that I would say are, if you really want to purchase things and order things, we're kind of looking at what can we create that is like individually wrapped snack items and those kind of things. I kind of try to operate like what could be the next possible crisis that we need to overcome. And so we're currently processing, what do we do if there is a shelter in place order that, does not allow people to get out and do outreach like what we're doing right now. That's probably the next biggest concern. And it may or may not happen. I don't know. I think it probably should in some respects, but how do we make sure that this 150 plus, are still fed every single night? And so we've been trying to prepare for that. Yesterday, we had some volunteers come in and they made about 500 snack bags. And it's things that are more like Vienna sausages, beef jerky, fruit cups, those kind of things that would stay. And so we're trying to figure out, what would be some good partnership and collaboration. Like, could we connect with the Springfield Police Department? Could we get those kind of snack bags to them? Could they stock their cruisers? And when they're already out patrolling our city, if they come across some of our friends that are out left on the street, can they provide them with a snack bag? Some of those kind of things. Because if that's not addressed, there's definitely a crime concern. There's definitely, as people get desperate and don't feel cared for, that is definitely something that I worry about. And so, anything to help with stocking up those kind of bags would be great. Right now, we're trying to do sack lunches every night. And so, you're trying to feed 150, 175 people when there's limits on only 2 loaves of bread at the grocery store. I mean, so that's become a real thing, just trying to get enough food to make sack lunches every night to get everyone fed. right now we're partnering with our daytime drop-in center. So we provide breakfast as well through our volunteer signups. And then dinner essentially is what they have. But I mean, you're talking about people that are walking, 10, 15 miles a day, burning a lot of calories that maybe are only trying to exist right now on a Nutri-Grain bar and a muffin, or, maybe if we had an amazing donation that morning, breakfast burritos or something, and then a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and an apple and a bag of chips and a string cheese at night. While those are all amazing donations and I'm grateful for every single one of them, it's just really scary to think what that would be like to have that be the daily existence that we're asking them to be okay with right now.
And they're doing all of that walking because they have absolutely nowhere to go, and it's cold. It's really, really cold here, and they have nowhere to just sit and wait this out. They're walking because they have nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. So I just want to, before we wrap up, I'd really like to know how there is going to be a lot of question about how you're able to get out and still do this kind of work during a time like this. How are you and your volunteers staying safe? How are you able to do this and make sure that you're still within this whole system of crisis?
Right. Yeah. So, we've been trying to, rotate some volunteers around. That's been important. We're trying to be cognizant of some of our volunteers who, have elderly or even small children at home. So they're not necessarily getting out right now. So they may be playing different roles. Like, for example, our worship leader, who is also our family connection leader at our church, she's got 2 little babies at home. And so it's just not the greatest idea to have her out there. But so that several of us who have older kids can go and do outreach every night, we kind of bring kids to her house. And so, they're kind of all loving together there so that we can be out. So, I mean, it's just kind of this constant fluidity of trying to make things work. We do try to be as careful as we can. We're trying to make sure that we wash hands frequently. We're wearing gloves. We try to make sure that we take clothes off when we get home and change and shower, just those kind of things as much as we can, trying to watch our volunteers, making sure we don't have anybody high risk that's volunteering. We're just trying to do the very best that we can. We by no means are equipped for this. But the truth is nobody was equipped for this. I mean, I think we're seeing that right now with just, even the shortage of masks and just essential items for our medical personnel. Nobody was ready for something like this. And so I think we're all just trying to do the very best we can and be wise in that. So, for us, one of the biggest challenges is just trying to keep that large group of people safe and socially distant. I mean, talk about, trying to keep, 75 people 10 to a group spread out over different areas of our sidewalk. It's hard. But I will tell you that there's definitely some fear. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of mental health struggles that I see starting that I'm really concerned about. There's some addiction issues that I'm concerned about. Some people that are relapsing who have been doing really well for a long time. Because, there's no longer beds at support centers. There are some that I know that have been sent home early from programs that they were completing wonderfully who are really struggling. And so just some of those poor coping options that a lot of people are dealing with right now. So, I think we're just trying to do the very best that we can, but our people, by and large, our homeless population have been incredibly grateful. They are very appreciative of the fact that we are doing everything we still can for them, even if it's limited, even if we can't do everything we wish we could do. That they are really grateful that they're doing what we can.
So let folks know how they can find you, how they can find a way to donate, where the donation sites are, all the ways to stay connected with your work.
Absolutely. So there's really 3 good places to connect with us. You can connect with us on our website, which is just theconnectinggrounds.com. We do have online giving there. So if you feel led to give, you can do that. Pretty much everything that we get in is going right back out into, bus passes and food and trying to meet needs the best that we can. You can also connect with us on our big Facebook page, just our main Facebook page, which is the Connecting Grounds on Facebook. But we also do have, if you're in the area and you just want to get involved and know what you can do to help, we have a Facebook group that is called TCG Outreach Volunteers. And you can jump in there as well and request to join that. That's where we kind of organize all of our meals and, who's doing what. It's also where we may post ideas. This morning, And for example, I posted an idea in there that just said, hey, if you can't get out, but you want to do something, I challenged people to send cards, just words of encouragement to those that are trying to survive on the streets right now. And we're going to collect those. We're going to give those out later this week because, there's just a need for some hope, to feel seen and to feel like people haven't forgotten them, that people are praying for them and thinking about them, I think can go a long way. So we post ideas like that in that Facebook group as well.
Great. And I noticed by following you on your personal Facebook page, you post some really great updates about what's happening and just your personal reflections. So that was a great way to stay connected.
I try to share at least a couple times a week, just, some things that we're seeing, just trying to raise awareness and share perspective that a lot of people don't get the chance to see every day.
And you touched on it just a little bit, but the big question is, what is going to happen if there is a shelter in place order and you guys can't even get out to volunteer?
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, I am hopeful that, that would be considered essential services. So I am hopeful that, a small group of us can still get out every day long enough to, get meals put together and meals delivered. That's what we're hopeful for. And if that's not going to be the case, then we have to figure out a plan. Best case scenario, we have to find a place. We have to find a place. Yeah, there has to be a place so that they have access to hygiene. They can shower, they can go to the bathroom. We can isolate fevers, we can address symptoms, we can make sure that there's food delivered every day. That is something we have got to figure out. And so, we'll do whatever we can to help in that process. If they ask us to or call upon us to, I am willing to do and lead in whatever capacity we need to. But that's my biggest hope right now, is that we find that solution, because that's the best case scenario for everybody right now.
And I think the best way to push that solution forward is for the community to be demanding a solution.
Absolutely. I was part of a group of faith leaders yesterday that issued a statement to our local newspaper, and that statement has also been sent to our state and local, leaders, our governor, just urging that those decisions would be made, that, shelter in place orders would be taken so we can flatten the curve. But in the midst of that, there would also be dramatic steps to be taken so that our homeless friends can also shelter in place and have a safe place to ride this out with food and hygiene and, just a roof over their head protected from the elements.
Christie, thank you so much. I mean, it is really the championing efforts of people like you and the people that are working with you that are going to make sure that we're all in this together. And I think before any of us say that we're all in this together, it's important to check ourselves and make sure that we're doing something to contribute to that happening. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for taking time to chat.